am from Stockton, California originally, but I was raised in Washington State.
Do you know why your parents named you Roemello?
My dad actually fought for my name to be Roemello. He watched this movie called Sugar Hill, and Wesley Snipes' main character, he is the main character, and his name is Roemello Scuggs.
Why Golden Age Thrift?
So Golden Age is a reference to 90s hip-hop culture, which is the golden era of hip-hop. I chose that because I would say that that's the biggest influence in like my style artistically, my style as far as clothing goes, and my style as a human being, I suppose. And then I was reselling vintage at the time before I was screen printing, and so Golden Age Thrift I felt like just fit perfectly. I also like the acronym GAT, you know.
What inspires your work?
I feel like there's so many different answers that I could give you, because there's also so many different like processes, like as far as like designing the thing and then when I'm physically making it. And I think that's kind of interesting too, because I'll have an idea for something. Like let's say I made a screen and it had, the screen initially for this glove is not designed for gloves. So I like to try and take whatever stencil that I have and work outside of that stencil. I guess like fight the boundary, but stay within the boundary at the same time. That's the fun part for me.
How does your creativity play a role in your personal exploration?
Well, kind of going back to like 90s hip hop, what I value the most about that is like that was art at its purest level. Because a lot of those guys, it was all about like, this is my style, don't steal my style because this is me. It's an honest expression. And I feel like that's the most perfect scenario for art, is when you can purely be yourself. What I like least about printing is the manufacturing part. So if I have to make 5 things, or 5 of the same thing, like it makes me sick. I feel dull inside. I'm like, man, this is not it. Because I think art and life, they're like it's one and the same, right? And so in life I try and live as honest as I can and be as pure and respect not only myself, but like respect my decisions and everything. Like there's this comedian that I really respect. He passed away. His name is Patrice O'Neill, but he was like a great thinker, and his whole thing was living righteously, and it wasn't like, praying and stuff, whatever. Not righteous in that sense, but like righteous to who you are. And so kind of the same way with art is like, I don't really care if it's gonna sell. I don't care if people like it or not. Like I want to make this stuff that's the tightest to me and that I can stand by. And that kind of plays into who I am as a human being too. It's like, well, if you don't have to like me, that's okay. Maybe I don't like you, and that's fine too. But if you're being you, I respect that more than anything. That's how I feel about my art and other people's art. I guess like clothing brands as a whole. I don't consider myself a brand necessarily, because I like to just have fun and make pieces. But I feel like the reason a lot of brands are kind of corny to me is because they see the formula and they follow the formula. And that's just lame. It's like, what about you? What do you really care about and enjoy? And if you don't enjoy this, then why are you making it?
How do you incorporate your cultural background?
This is interesting too. All of my family is in Stockton, and my mom, dad, and I moved in with my aunt in Washington State. I was like 6.5 years old. I didn't grow up around any of my family, and we lived in the woods. Yeah, I loved outdoors. I love fishing. It's my favorite thing to do. I love fishing. I explored by myself all the time, and there was no brown people where I lived. At my elementary school, I could literally count every grade. There was like 1 black guy in there. Like no Mexican people really. Like, yeah, I'm Mexican and Filipino. I didn't know any Filipinos until I moved out here, aside from my family.
That's crazy.
I didn't know a lot of Mexicans aside from playing soccer. I developed my culture from like myself, really. It was just like my dad really put me onto hip hop music, and we watched a lot of kung fu and martial arts movies. I did martial arts growing up. I played soccer, and I was alone all the time. I'm an only child. I literally just like, it was my imagination. I read books, I played, whatever. Really, my culture doesn't tie into it because I don't know my culture, which kind of sucks, but it's also, I have my own culture that I created for me. It kind of goes back into the honesty thing too. If I was to make something that was like Chicano pride, it would be so disingenuous because that's not me. And it's like, I'm down for the Chicanos, I'm down for my people, of course, but I would do that a disservice because it's not what I grew up into. So I'm not going to play this part of like, oh, la raza, or, whatever the Filipino people say, like, this, yeah, so I try and stay true. Again, like, I guess my culture would be me in my mind, and so I do try and stay true and represent, like, well, I make what I like, you know, and I don't care. Like, a lot of my stuff too is like, I don't know, like, I have a lot of characters, and they're like Asian characters and masks and stuff, and it's like, well, I just love that stuff, and it's not to take from necessarily, but it's like, oh, this speaks to me, and I want to represent it beautifully because I love this and I respect it, so I want you to, like, see how cool it is.
What keeps you motivated in your creative journey?
There is a feeling whenever I make a new design and I burn the screen, and as soon as I lay the screen down, I print it out, and right when I lift it, if I'm like, ooh, that's what I'm hunting for every time, is I like, yo, this is crazy. If I don't get that feeling, then I know it's a dud. I'm like, man, I'm not pleased with what just happened. I can count the very first time, I wish I had this shirt in here. So the first time that I ever played with halftones, which is, you take a photo image, and then you do bitmap and Photoshop, whatever. But it's basically, you can just print a picture of somebody. And I had never done that before. I was probably 2 years into printing, maybe a year and a half. And I remember when I first printed it out, I did the thing and I lifted it and I was like, oh my God, I have unlocked a whole new thing here. It's like, I can make anything I want now. And that feeling it was like surreal. Even right now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, dude, I just remember that so well because I felt so limited. That really set me free. And so this is like one of my favorite shirts of all time.
How do you stay innovative in such a competitive industry?
I have no competition. And that can come off however it comes off. But really, this probably sounds arrogant, but I know a lot of cats who make stuff, and I'm a supporter of all things, but I am not doing what they're doing. And they're not doing what I'm doing. You know, it's totally different lanes. Like, again, I don't do a brand, and so my numbers are probably not as high as far as sales go. Like, it's just totally different things, so I really don't concern myself with that stuff. I just want to be the best, you know. I don't have any ultimate goals or really short-term goals, to be honest with you. Because my biggest goal right now is to hit 10,000 hours of printing. I'm at 5,000, I would say, maybe like a couple hundred hours under, but that's my goal. If I've gotten 5,000 in 4.5 years, I got another 4.5 to go. And when I get there, I guess we'll see what happens.